Today on the Cameron Journal podcast, we are joined by Mario Wissa. This is very interesting. He is an Egyptian fellow who has come to America via Tennessee. Not the best state to pick, but we'll forgive him for that. And he is decided to start writing about relationships, which I think is very interesting and fascinating. Hopefully there'll be nothing about you need to build your lover a pyramid or a tomb for the afterlife or anything like that. No, keeping her organs in a jar, this sort of thing. But it's going to be very entertaining to find out what relationship advice we do need that hopefully does not involve wrapping anybody in gauze. So welcome, Mario, to the Cameron Journal podcast.
Thank you so much for the opportunity and the chance. And if I can't talk about organs in a jar, so what's the purpose of this podcast?
I knew it.
That's brilliant. I love it.
It's a nice hook. If you get people laughing, they'll stay around to listen. So
you are good, brother. Much respect.
Yes, I don't get to do much. I used to be a headlining stand-up comedian, and I don't get to do much humor or stand-up anymore.
Ooh.
So it all comes here. That's when I do still tell little funny jokes and things like that. So
and that was just spontaneous. You did not plant this. It just
no. I just came up with that right now. Yes, no. I just come up with it right now. Yes.
Incredible.
So years ago, this will get back to you in a second. But years ago, I used to host a drag show at this gay bar in Denver, and I hosted the burlesque show. And I also used to host with a side show. They would do pounding a nail into your nose and laying on a bed of nails and this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so I would do the interstitials while they were setting up for acts. So I'd have to come out and talk to the crowd and tell funny jokes and all this sort of thing. So I got really good at just kind of coming up with stuff on the fly, especially if they needed more time to set up for an act or whatever have you. I would just sort of come up with things. And so that's how I learned how to do that. So
as you're coming up with things and sharing, I'm just really curious. Again, I know I'm supposed to be the guest here, but what is like stopping you or preventing you from thinking, oh, what other people thinks about what I'm doing? Because you're extremely natural. You're just
no, I'm incredibly I'm autistic. I'm incredibly self-conscious about how people perceive me. It's just something where when you look like this, and obviously I'm a larger person and I have a brain that works different, all this type of thing, people are going to say what they're going to say. Half of my YouTube comments are calling me slurs for being gay, it's too fat, go on a diet, all this type of thing, blah, blah, blah. And so I've been doing this for, we were saying before I hit record, I have been doing this for so long. And I've gotten so many terrible comments that I'm just sort of used to them now. People on Twitter have called me Mr. Potato Head. Like, it's just part of the job. It's part of what goes along with it. And so I try not to be too self-conscious, mostly because people are going to criticize anyway. Everyone's already judged me in their heads in advance about this, that, and the other thing, because I'm a very weird and odd person. And so I just sort of lean into that and say funny things and whatever have you, because everyone's already made 1,000 decisions about me before I've even opened my mouth. So, but don't let me fool you. I do get very self-conscious about how people perceive me. That's why I try to dress right and make sure my face is as good as it can be and my hair is as good as it can be and all this type of thing, because there's everything kind of else about me to compensate for. So
wow. So you've dealt with hassle for too long that you almost like became callous to it now. You're more concrete on what you stand for, who you are. But that sounds right, no?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And yes. And I think especially if you're going to look like me in this business, you have to learn at a very early on to deal with every snide and not take it too personally, because there are tons of snide comments, all this sort of thing. I mean, and they come out of left field all the time. And so you just have to immediately learn how to let it go and not take it too personally. And this is an area where I still struggle. I sometimes take things a little too personally, but I've gotten pretty good at keeping the amount of time that I take it personally and care about it to be very short. So it might come in and it might affect me, but then it's very short and we move on quickly. But I will say it's easier to disregard something a stranger says. The closer you are to me as a person, or especially in a romantic relationship, then it's a little bit harder to let it all go. That's still an area where I definitely struggle, and I think that's true for most people.
100%.
The more intimacy you have with someone, the more difficult it is to just let comments go.
Yeah, I think most of us are familiar with like the following saying, like people who love you are the ones who can hurt us the most. Sounds
Yes,
familiar, right? That is
absolutely.
so freaking true. In the meantime, I can't help it, but as I'm listening to you, there is a really powerful book, and I know I'm supposed to be talking about my own books, but nothing is personal. I cannot remember the author, but I read this book in 2019 and it really changed my perspective that nothing is personal unless we decide it is, which is not easy in human experience sometimes.
No, no, but no, it definitely is. And I have to look that book up. It's good. It's good. It is definitely an excellent starting point. If you're one of those people who's filled with anxiety about every tiny little thing and it
Me.
sends you into apoplectic shock and all those type of things, that's an excellent place to start. Um,
Mhm.
I think one of the hard things about being a public person, as I have done doing television all over the world and
Mm.
being on podcasts and having, written articles and owning a platform called the Cameron Journal that I think as of this morning has 1,913 pieces of content on there.
Wow.
And there's 300 episodes of this show and all the YouTube videos and everything else. I think one of the hardest parts of the job is dealing with the incoming comments from people who don't know you, never met you. Their only interaction with you is through the medium that you've put out there into the world. And of course, they have an opinion. I think that's probably, if you have a lot of anxiety about that, that's one of the hardest things to deal with. And also, I'm 37 in 3 months. My not care, not give a fuck is really starting to settle in as we approach 40. And so that definitely, when I was in my 20s, everything was an issue and a problem and was a cause to drink and whatnot. At 37, it's kind of like oh, people have been calling me that for a long time. Whatever, next, like block, like we're moving on. Like, like so it
You
takes time.
must be proud of yourself.
Mm, Not always. You
Take a
know,
practice. Came a long
it
way.
yeah, it's I think it would be I think it would be easier to be more proud of it all if it had kind of ever gone anywhere or ever made a lot of money, which it never has. The audience is not as big as I would like it to be. The money is never near where I would like it to be. All this sort of thing, and so I think that kind of it's difficult to really chat up the success of the crazy, insane life I've lived that's led me to this point. Without also being mindful of I'm almost 40 and and I'm just not where I thought I would be. And it's not nearly, as glamorous. You're my third recording today. The first two were difficult episodes to do. And we're definitely not as fluid as this exchange will be and all this sort of thing. And so it's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag. On the one hand, if I'd told myself when I was 17 years old, this is the life you're going to lead, that kid would do back handsprings. Because it is everything I could have ever possibly wanted. Like, you wanted to have friends all over the world, you have them. You wanted to go and have great amazing conversations with great amazing people, and you will do all this sort of thing. But I'm also in a place in my life where the values and priorities have changed. um it's like I want to have like a house, stable housing and living. I want to have a kind of a more stable time, more free time, especially now I basically work two jobs. I run a whole publication and I also run part of my book publisher with a business partner sort of thing, and that leads to a lot of long hours. My day started at 10:30 and it's 7:15 here on the East Coast, and this is my Friday, and I've had 3 podcast recordings counting you and 2 meetings, and I've answered probably 25 emails. And that's just today. So sort of thing. So it's a mixed bag of the, oh wow, I did get to do all of those things and I lived that certain way, and I've gotten to live on both coasts and all over the country, and I've met great people and I've had a lot of relationships and all this type of thing. But at this stage of life, just the priorities have changed. But I also find myself in a difficult place of trying to figure out how to do that. So it's odd. It's a weird place to be in. Just is.
I'm really curious. How many people do you know in your life who are as accepting as you are in the process of growing, maturing, changing?
Oh, I don't think too many. I know because they always come to me for advice and issues and problems and all this sort of thing. It's a very I think you have to have grown up in a certain way and in a certain environment um to have that. Um Fortunately I had I'll politely say a difficult childhood. And in a weird way that gave me a lot of tools to handle the life that I've led. Um, and I think a lot of people who grow up in different circumstances don't necessarily have those tools. They have to build those later, if they ever do at all, which they might not. Um, it's definitely. I mean, I will say this of myself: I am one of one. You'll not find anyone else like me running around, which sometimes confuses people and makes life for me very difficult because people don't always necessarily know what to do with me. They're just kind of like, where did you come? Why were you made? Like, what? It leads to a lot of confusion.
I feel like this would actually truly, in a transparent way, that actually makes you a treasure amongst us with a unique experiences and struggles and things you have to share. As I'm saying this, I'm aware not many people can possibly understand or relate or see the same way, yet I think you do. And that is the most important aspect in it.
I mean, I try, and that's part of what we talk about on this show. Is I talk with, all these different people and I bring forth perspectives. The Cameron Journal is a journey where we go and explore different things, different people, types of storytelling, all this type of thing. I mean, this week we had debuted on the show this week, Flora Chian. She wrote a book called South of the Yangtze about her life growing up in China under the one child policy. um and her migration to America and everything else. And so yeah, and that's its own very weird, unique set of circumstances. But that's what we do here, you know? Is we try to, have these conversations and bring forth the most fascinating conversations with the most interesting people that I can get a hold of. And today, I promise, even though we've made this way too much about me, I promise today that's you. So we should turn our attention to your books on relationships. And the first thing I want to find out is why you decided to start writing about relationships.
You can tell from the sigh, I'm like, I got a lot to unpack. To be concise and deliberate, to share that experience with me, two things. One, the family that I grew up in, as you mentioned, Egypt, Cairo, and the family dynamic that was happening, it seemed to me it was not satisfactory. And part of me felt like there is a better option out there. Besides that, as I'm speaking to you right now, uh, I am 42 years of age and I have been married and divorced twice. And I've had little over 5 girlfriends. So I've had so many relationships, and I realized that most of my struggles in the relationships, I was actually struggling with me, with myself.
Mm.
And honestly, this came upon me when I took my very first intra-personal communication class back in 2010. Intrapersonal communication is how we converse with ourselves. Interpersonal communication is like you and I are having right now, one-on-one. Group is more than 2 or 3 people, and it can turn into organizational communication. So when I took this one class, intrapersonal communication, it showed me a couple of things. Number one, number one, that relationships do not end. It only transitions from one phase to another until death. So you're in a relationship with someone, Today, they're your friend. Tomorrow, boyfriend, girlfriend. Couple weeks later, a couple months later, just a friend. A year later, a distance friend. The relationship evolves over time. Yet, the relationship truly only ends with death. If I break up with someone and I see them 10, 15 years later down the road, they'll go like, hey, how you doing? What's going on? The relationship's still there, yet it has evolved. Number two, actually, I kid you not, this is 100% factual. When I learned that piece of information, I remember going back home to my condominium and really going to bed and crying for like 3 hours. I kid you not. The most impactful relationship that we have in our life is our relationship with ourselves. And the most powerful and impactful voice that we will ever hear is our own. Hence, my first book is Empowering Communication Unleashed. The subtitle is The Most Powerful Voice You Will Ever Hear is Your Own.
Impressive. Well, when it comes to learning about ourselves in a relationship, I know that's certainly true for me. Um, and I went through a breakup last year, and I recently sort of realized a lot of things about relationships I did not know. Um, the chiefest of which is I did not understand the assignment of what relationships were. Um, and and now that I do, it kind of makes sense. But it also sort of broken my brain about who on earth I would, necessarily want to be with or find attractive or all that sort of thing. And I feel like that whole system is just sort of offline. But um, what are maybe some of the biggest things you've learned in relationships about yourself?
Oh my goodness. Okay. I'm so glad. I did not anticipate any of these questions. I get really excited by spontaneous questions. I am going to have to slow down for myself, for you, for our listeners, and just simply think about the word relationship. Some people call it relationship, but that's a different story. Right now we call it relationship. The term literally came from the US Navy military, believe it or not. So I actually served in the US Navy. I'm a veteran. I served for about 8 years. And relation, connection, and ship, literally actual boat and ship. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Have you ever seen it that way before?
No, I can't say that I have.
For me personally, because you're asking for me personally, I realized actually, I want to say two simple facts, yet honestly, it's really humbling to bring this up. One, that I was not real with myself in my relationships. I was giving them the best, brightest side of me, and I was hiding my struggles. And I'm sorry, I just noticed the video. Like it's zoomed in. I don't know why. Here. Sorry, let me change this real quick. The camera. So one, that I was not being real in my relationships with my partners, because I had a lot of traumas and wary to share my truth, which ties into number two. In 2014, my ex-girlfriend mom, believe it or not, she gave me this book for Valentine's Day as a gift. The book, it was an audiobook. The book was The Power of Vulnerability by Brené Brown. I think it's about 6 hour recording. I must have listened to that like half a dozen times in about 6 months. Walking, going to the gym, listening to it, cleaning around the house, listening to it. Gender. unfortunately, in this society, put constraints on how we think, how we behave, what we say. For example, it's really common for men. Let's say there's some catastrophe happening in some city or state. We say, save mothers or women, kids, and dogs. No one mentioned men's,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
which is really, really so. Men are supposed to be tough, reliant, protective, provider, but it's just humans. In my relationships, honestly, I was not operating from I am a human principle. I was operating from these are the things that I have to do as a man. And that was really destructive for me. As I mentioned before, really quick, I've been married and divorced twice. I don't have any kids of my own intentionally. I was not ready to have kids and still not ready to have kids. Um, it is a culture thing, if you want to call it, that men have so much pressure on them, as we all know and we heard that you're supposed to behave in a certain way and fit specific parameters. And that's what I did in my relationships. I was trying to fit that. And every time I try and fit it and I don't fit in it, it's just more destructive. Yes, my partner was enjoying the experience. I was serving, I was providing, I'm there for them, but I don't feel content in the relationship because I'm just like going, giving. And if they're trying to give me, I say no. If they try and do something good to me, I feel like I don't deserve it. And that is the third point. After a few relationships, I learned that cultivating self worthiness is irreplaceable, priceless. Um, I do not sit there and wait for people to pick me. I'm not a seller. I'm also a buyer. I get to choose what connections and relationships I get involved into mindfully, intentionally, and deliberately.
Mm. No, that is that I want to give that some spaces. That's so profound.
You're very
Especially
welcome.
speaking as someone for whom my qualifications for a relationship in the past were anyone who said yes. Um, because I thought that that was good enough. The bar was on the floor. As long as you were interested, so was I. And now I'm in a very different place on that subject, where I'm kind of like, no, there are some things that I'm looking for now, sort of thing. There's the priorities have changed, um, and that also, but that also goes along with understanding the assignment of what a relationship is and what's really important. Um, which the the giving service end is about one quarter of that. Um,
Mm,
but the only real point of a relationship is the companionship and spending time together, and that's all it does.
mm,
There's nothing more to be expected from it. Um, I think I expected a lot more from relationships than that. Mostly because spending time with someone does, to be very blunt with you, has very little value to me. I am an autistic only
mm,
child. I have spent most of my existence alone. So for me, it's like, oh, spending time with someone else, that's usually more of a drain and a chore than it is a value add sort of thing.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
But in a romantic relationship context, that really is the assignment. That is like the being there, and so that's one quarter of it. The time spent companionship thing is about the other half of it, so we're up to three quarters. And then the sex, the vulnerability, the building life, all that's kind of the last bit, sort of thing. And it's for me, it's created a bit of a crisis because, to be very honest with you, I have never dated someone, nor frankly met most people, that I wanted to spend that much time around. And I think that's part of the reason why I eventually get wore out of it is because
I
it's kind of
love
like, no, I had a girlfriend in college where I said, I got to break
that.
up with her. She's in my house more than the furniture. Like this is
Love you,
like this.
Cameron.
Like this is just terrible. I've got to get her out of here. You know, it's like she's. It's like one couch, one chair, one coffee table, one woman, sort of. I mean, it's just too much. Too much. But I realized that that is literally what it. You know what it is. Even the emotional stuff kind of pales in comparison to. Do you want to be in the same space as this person a lot of the time for a
Mm,
long time? And for me, that's a high bar. And you have to know how to behave and comport yourself and how to act in a way that is not crazy and, you know, and to to have a certain amount of appropriateness about things. I was raised in a very different world where you were very mindful of your impact on other people. You were very mindful of how your actions affect other people, other things, all this sort of thing. And so that yeah, it's a very different way of being I have found than most other people are or have been. Um and it's really for me it's really broken the whole idea of relationships. Like in terms of like, ooh, I might need to be single for the rest of my life. Like it I just may not be suited for it. So, um after all of these marriages and girlfriends and all this type of thing, at 42, where are you with romantic relationship? Where are you with all of this? What are you looking for now? What has changed for you now?
uh, I love your question because last time I was in an intimate relationship was back in 2018, which is 7 years ago. And I mentioned something a couple of minutes ago um, that I have to elaborate on. In terms of relationship approach, I mean it in a mindful way and not in a very strict black or white way. But when we go into relationships, there is a different perspective from being, as you said, oh, I'm ready for a relationship. Anyone can take me be in relationship, or someone can also say, you know what, I'm ready for a relationship, but I get to choose. Basically, in a language we can oversimplify it and say like buyer and seller. I don't know. This is not maybe not the healthy language, the healthiest language to use, buyer and seller. Um, Yet the point that you bring up, where you get to the point where you think, you know what, I'm going to choose who I'm going to be in a relationship with. Well, brother, since this question crossed my mind 7 years ago, I have little to no interest in being in a relationship with anyone because
Welcome
I'm
to the
cultivating my
club. The water
yeah.
is lovely. It's free membership. I'll get them to send out your VIP card later. I'm in exactly the same place. My interest level at this stage of my life could not be lower. If you told me that 10 years ago, I'd immediately want to go outside and shoot myself. Nowadays, I'm kind of like, I don't know if it's for me. I don't know that it's for me, you know. It just my whole perspective has changed, especially since realizing, oh, it's just the whole spending time with this person bit. Like that's literally half the job. I'm kind of like, I've never met someone I wanted to be around that much. Like it's very conflicted. And so I was kind of curious about that. And it's kind of funny you arrived at the same conclusion because it's a very odd place to be in. You know, it is. It's a very odd place to be in.
So this is actually, I have to be very frank with you. So 70% of my research is about intra personal communication, how we converse with ourselves.
Yes.
And
Oh, we're gonna get to that in a minute. Don't worry.
at the beginning, as I'm researching and looking into it, it sounds so much fun. And there's like infinite bottom to its bottomless ocean to
Yeah.
explore. Yet there must be a disclaimer to this process, and I mean it from my heart. The more we actually connect with our true self, This could dissolve our society, but honestly, the more we connect authentically with ourselves, the less we have for others.
Yeah. No, I think that is definitely true. I was I was with someone who um did not like me the way I present myself most of the time and preferred me to consume a lot of weed and cannabis because I was
Mm.
more authentic that way. Um in relationships, and this has been true since I was in high school. A lot of I most of the women I've been with have found me very cold and aloof. Um, and I'm not surprised, especially with the autism thing. I think that, sort of makes sense. Um, and I suppose the to be kind of, find someone who finds that appealing. But yes, and so I think it's, I think there's, sort of, maybe barriers falling down or, more freedom. But it's kind of funny to be kind of like, so you don't really love me. You love me in an altered state that you can actually stand to be around. Well, that's not a good endorsement now, is it? Um, and but I do think as we get in touch with all of that, it is, we definitely do rely on people less. And I think for a lot of people, that level of independence is incredibly beguiling, but it's also dead frightening, and most people can't do it. Like, and how many people, friends, do you know stay in terrible relationships because they're too afraid to be alone? It's a trope for a reason. Um, and so kind of turning to the whole intra communication sort of situation. Um, what how do we change that conversation inside of ourselves? How do we begin that shift to something that is honest, authentic, intimate with ourselves, all this sort of thing?
As I'm listening to your question, I have to tell you that I'm really containing myself because I'm really excited about the question and the answer. To be very honest with you, I love this stuff. One is awareness, two, challenging it, three, acting intentionally. So, one of the things I discovered for my research that every single human being has an inner negative voice that was given to us, that was given, that was given to us at a young age. We did not ask for it. It was just given to us. Being aware of that truly can change our life in just one day, 24 hours. Number two, challenging this thought as like, is this true? And actually sit with it. When I say sit with it, I mean like sit on a chair, sit on the floor, cross legged, and just really chew on this idea. Is it really true? Third, no matter how we think and how we feel, which is thoughts, it's factual. Thoughts become come before feelings, no matter how we think or how we feel. Oh my God, the camera. Sorry, let me choose the camera. It keeps changing gestures. Actions. Actions can overpower thoughts and feelings. I can think about this person. I can reflect on this experience in relationship until I take action in a different direction. Our mind is stuck. So I think I've shared this with you that I practice yoga and meditation, and we hear so much about mind body connection. We all know what body is, but where is mind?
Yeah.
Mind and body connection. So the ability to make that connection, it really helps us in relationship to be authentic.
Mm. And I think, I don't know, I think that's something, I mean, I find as an autistic person, it seems like everyone else is very good at that. But I also have heard people talk about how incredibly difficult it is. Um, And I think we like to pretend to be other people, or we want to be the person that we think the other person we want to be with finds attractive, and then come to find out they're not exact. What you were sold is not what's in the tin. It's not what's in the tin, sort of thing. And you were sold something different entirely, or the infamous, oh, if I get with them, I can change them, sort of thing. And sometimes people morph into someone else for the sake of a relationship, which I think is the most psychologically damaging thing you can do. Um, but people seem to like it. It seems to keep a lot of marriages together. Um, I don't know. How, in your view, how easy is it to, like, once you've gone through that intra communication shift change and you kind of found that authentic thing and you're living there most of the time, what's the next step? How do you bring that out into the world?
Um, First, I was holding myself intentionally not to say anything, just listening to you. Yet I have something really burning that I have the desire to say.
Well, begin with that.
Uh, Most of the time in life, which is a personal experience and based on my research. So I have so many stories to prove that what we get in life is basically a reflection, which sounds really familiar. Reflection, what is happening on the inside. So what I mean by that is many relationships that I went into, I was not being my authentic self. I was not.
Yeah.
That's what I'm providing. Well, guess what? That's why universe provide me. The other person is not authentic self either. And
Yeah.
this is pretty tough because to be genuine, to be real, to be vulnerable, it takes a lot, regardless to the gender, just being a human. It is a tough step to take, especially in the culture and society that we live in, between the sales and marketing and everyone's trying to make a buck. Um, Being authentic with ourselves. To get to answer to your question, being so much authentic with myself, I feel like I don't feel like I want to get into a relationship.
No, 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 no. I mean,
Touching
it's
up on this again.
no, no. I think here's the reality. I think there's a lot of people who think that way, feel that way, and there's probably people listening and watching to this who've had the thought but would never dare admit it to themselves, would never dare tell someone, would never dare admit it, sort of thing. Um, and so perhaps the both of us saying maybe gives some people some permission.
Yes.
To
That's true.
say that, feel that, whatever have and be like, yeah, it's like I'm doing my thing, I'm living authentically in this way, and that does not necessarily include another person. It doesn't need to include another person. It might not for to include another person for a variety of reasons. And that's where we are now, and that may change down the road. Um, if you meet someone who just, meets you where you are and what you're doing works for them and what they're doing works for you, that may change. But I think it is, I agree. And I think this is why a lot of women who lose a husband, like in their 50s and 60s, never get remarried. And there was an article in the New Yorker about this, that would never, like, one man was enough. We don't need more, sort of thing. And I think it's because a lot of women finally find that place in the mature years, and they don't want to change it for somebody else, and they're not looking for new suggestions, sort of thing. And so the fastest way to avoid that whole discussion is to just kind of avoid men altogether. And I think that I think that is I think that's probably why, is you get to this wonderful place. And you're just kind of like, I like where I am. I like what I'm doing. I like my routine. I like my stuff, all this sort of thing. And I don't necessarily want to get involved with someone else for that. And that's okay.
You bring up a very important point for us to make it clear here, that there is a difference between saying, oh, what's coming my way? I'll take it. And the other side is like, what's coming my way? I get to choose what I want to take. Um, so I'm going to have to do a quick and sudden shift for yoga here, which it is for me tied into communication. My two pillars are communication and yoga. And the word yoga is actually Sanskrit for the word yog. And the word yog from Sanskrit to English, it means bond or union. Upon practicing yoga for a certain amount of time, different for one person to another, we cultivate this connection between us personally, the deep self, not just us, the body, or what people think about us, but the really deep self, and the universe. Not to get too spiritual on this community and this podcast because we're more academic here. When this connection happens, we feel less need for other entertainment in the world. Hence, we take once we practice this and reach to the point, we take on responsibility in our lives intentionally. For example, me personally, I'm a single man. I'm happy to meet a woman anytime and just start a relationship, go out and dating. And oftentimes, the moment I come across someone that I might be slightly interested into, the first thing comes in my head is, do you really have time for this right now? I can't control it. Did I really cultivate this intentionally? No. That means maybe next week, next month, next year, I will have time for that. Yet the inner awareness, inner, INNER, inner awareness is crucial to guide us, which I'm so sorry about that. That was a mistake. I moved my hand so much, which in turns, what the heck was that? Which in turns guide other people. Yet their true guidance becomes from within. And since you are allowing me this space, I want to take advantage of it for a few more seconds and tell you, we all familiar with the word guru. Guru. Guru is another Sanskrit word. It's actually two words, gu and ru. And do not believe anything I tell you. You have access to Google, research everything I'm telling you. Gu is like dark, and ru is like someone who sheds light on our darkness. When we become our own guru, there is no turning back. 1, 2, many people will not be able to understand it. 3, I cannot force my guru on other people because every single human being have their own path.
Yeah. No, and I think that is, I think it's wonderful if, you get together young and you grow together and you become your own person in the context of a long-term relationship or marriage or whatever have you. And God bless you if that's your story. Wonderful for you. That's maybe about a third of everybody out there. The middle third is going to be in something terrible, and the bottom third is going to be a struggle. That's okay. I think it's rule of a third. But I think it is so sort of mindful of that. And I think that's probably the one thing, why we don't have everybody in a relationship now the same way we used to. I think it's because, we don't have people being staying together for 50 years the way we used to. It's just such a different times have changed, people's priorities have changed, the economic independence of women has changed, what people are looking for in relationships have changed. I think it is, there's definitely a push for men to become more desirable as opposed to women that I think is irreparably broken dating in this country. Because most men don't know how to do that, and quite frankly, most of them don't want to know how to do that. And it's very different now. And so I think we find ourselves looking inward. We find ourselves spending more time on ourselves, developing stuff, fixing issues, all this type of thing. One of the complaints I hear from women oftentimes is they're tired of fixing men. Um, and so I think there's kind of this increased burden to kind of handle your own stuff before bothering somebody else with it. Um, it's a very odd place we find ourselves in 2025 when it comes to this stuff, I find.
I really like a comment that you made 10 seconds ago about men or women. Um, I think it's really important to be aware of how our mind subconsciously divide humanity into genders and sexes. And we completely forget that this is just another human being who did not choose where to be born, did not choose whose parents they're going to have. They did not choose what language, what religion, what education. Hence, every single one of us is doing our best. And I will plug in. I know I keep talking about different books than other than mine, but there's a really amazing book. It's called Marriage Machine by Gillian Freeman. And basically, it talks about, you can think of like marriage or relationship. It is actually a growth machine. What that means is, imagine for yourself and our listeners, and I'm also, as I'm describing this, I am imagining it. If you have one potato, sounds weird already, but if you have one potato and you're trying to wash one potato, you wash it that way. Yet, if you have 100 potatoes, you can wash each one that way, or you can put them all in a pot and mix them against each other, and they wash each other. And that is the idea of relationship and marriage, that we actually help each other to develop and grow. We see each other's flaws, we see each other's downside, we predict or expect growth and see how things could be, and we try to challenge the other person to get there. Now, this is not a crystal clear idea. It's like not everyone knows how to do this, and not every relationship is healthy in that way. Yet, this is the merit idea of like marriage and relationship. I challenge her, she challenges me, we both grow. For me, I quit. To be honest with you, I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I feel that very strongly. Yes, I feel that very strongly. No, Jan Van Zant said relationships are a place we go to grow and solve problems and expose traumas and all this type of thing. And she herself said, and I'm not interested in doing it, which is why I'm not in a relationship right now. And I'm kind of like, yes, sister. So those sort of things, I totally get that. It is a difficult thing, but we could go on all night, but it's 7 minutes to the hour and my voice is gone.
Oh my God. Thank you so much for reminding me. I actually have a podcast in like 7 minutes. Thank you. I was not aware of time. Oh my God. You are an incredible human being, Cameron. Thank you.
That's my job. So why don't you let us know where you can buy your books and keep up with you online, and we'll get you on your way.
So really quick, my website, which I have an incredible team working with me, which I'm truly grateful for, that created the website and the marketing materials. My website is mariowissa.com, and last name Wissa, Wissa. My email is contact me at mariowissa.com. And the offer that I have is anyone who's looking to purchase my book or materials for any reason, if they cannot afford it, all they have to do, just send me an email. I can email them e-copy of the book or actual copy of the book. I have done this for couple dozen people in the last couple of months. So I'm open to help. I'm retired. I'm doing this for goodness, and that's all.
All right. Well, Thank you so much for coming on the Cameron Journal podcast. It's been a pleasure having you.
You're incredible. Thank you for what you do and your experience.
That's all for this episode of the Cameron Journal podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Visit us online at CameronJournal.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and I love to talk to my followers and listeners, so please feel free to get us on social media at Cameron Cowan on Twitter, and we'll see you next time on the Cameron Journal podcast. Thank you.